Hi guys, in today's how-to video I want to quickly explain the bare essentials on how power factor is measured in IPSC using a chronograph. Scoring in IPSC as well as in USPSA is rather complex and difficult, especially if you need to explain it to a new and beginner shooter. One of the important elements to calculate your scores is the use of the power factor. Now, before I explain the bare essentials of power factor and how it's measured, I do refer you to the latest version of the IPSC rulebook, specifically Rule 5.6, as well as the appendixes, which provide much more information and details on both. I also want to emphasize that the focus of this video is IPSC and not so much USPSA, because it's not 100% identical. I do refer to the USPSA rulebook for more information on that. The power factor is actually defined as a formula in which you have to multiply the weight of your bullet times the average velocity of your bullet shot through your gun divided by 1000, and that will actually get you a minor or a major power factor. In IPSC, the minor power factor for all divisions is the same, it's 125. Does that mean that you cannot go higher? Of course you can go higher, especially if the gun operates better or you feel much better with a higher power factor, but the minimum to achieve is 125. You can never go lower. If you would go lower, I explain later on what will happen to your scoring. You can also opt for certain divisions, classic, standard and open, to shoot in major power factor, which is significantly higher than minor power factor. And why is that? Because you're shooting a hotter load with much more powder, different weights of your bullets, which basically boils down to much more recoil, and more recoil is awarded by different points. The A zone for both minor and major is the same, it's 5 points, but the difference comes with the Charlies and the Deltas. Charlies in minor are scored with 3 points, in major 4 points. The Deltas in minor are scored with a 1 point and in major with 2 points. So there is a significant difference in shooting a minor or major power factor. It becomes even more complex if, for example, you shoot in open minor because you are ranked in a mixed division, which means the minors and the major are actually scored together, so you automatically have a disadvantage compared with major power factor shooters. Now, the power factor itself is actually measured, especially on level 2 and more matches, with a chronograph. And a chronograph is a device to actually measure the velocity of your round once it leaves the barrel. This is the more classical chronograph that you will still find on a lot of ranges. It actually uses infrared light, which the bullet passes through, and the speed is actually recorded. And if you shoot multiple rounds, you can actually get an average speed. Also put in the bullet weight and you actually get your power factor. And there's a new type of chronograph that is being rolled out on a lot of ranges, which uses a different type of technology. Instead of lights, it actually uses a radar, which basically does the same thing. It also measures the velocity of the round once it leaves the barrel. And again, if you put in the bullet weight, you also get your power factor, and that will define whether or not you are shooting in minor or major, and will also result in a different points per scored hit on the target. Now that we know what power factor is, how it relates to your scoring, as well as how the power factor is actually measured with the chronograph, I do want to explain the bare essentials on the procedure that you might encounter during a level 2 or more match. Before getting into the specifics, I do want to say that in my opinion, all serious IPSC clubs do have a chronograph available, and they set it up on a regular basis so that the competitive shooters can actually test the power factor for their respective production and or the reloaded ammo with their specific gun that they use during training, but specifically during a competition in their club. I suggest that you do this on a regular basis, because you do not want to be confronted with a chrono test, never have done it before, thinking that you achieve a specific power factor based on any which argument, and during the chrono it actually becomes clear that you did not achieve your minor or your major power factor, and you are reclassified, or your scores are not ranked because you didn't even achieve the minor power factor. So word of advice, check with your IPSC club whether or not they have a chronograph, and use it on a regular basis to test your ammo and your gun, just to ensure that you achieve your respective power factor. Now, at which levels might you encounter a chrono test? Rarely do you see them at level 1 or club matches. At level 2 and especially level 3 and more matches, there's not only equipment tests and checks, but also chrono base, in which shooters just before or during the match are being requested to do a chrono test to verify that the declared power factor is actually the actual power factor that they use. Depending in which region you are shooting and the organization by the match officials, it can be either before or during a match. I refer you to the match book, which oftentimes states the exact procedure and the expectations as far as measuring the power factor. Also, a question I get asked a lot is the power factor measured by different guns that they have available, or your own gun. The answer is simple. They have to use the competitor's firearm as well as their respective ammunition, so they cannot use any other gun to measure the power factor for your specific division or gun. Also, what happens if there's no chrono bay or chronograph available, or for example the device that they have is malfunctioning, is broken, then they actually have to go with what you declare as to be the power factor, which is used for the results. What is the specific procedure? Well, at a particular time, which is detailed in the match book, the match official will actually ask you to surrender 8 rounds of your ammunition that comes from your ammo box, and the first round is used to weigh the weight of your bullet, so it's knocked off with a hammer and then it's actually weight, because that is used to put into the formula that I just explained. 3 rounds are then fired through the chronograph to actually measure the average velocity of the 3 rounds. Now, if you then achieve your power factor for your respective division, then you're good to go, everything is okay, and you can continue shooting. They will actually also mention and log it down that you have performed the chrono test and that it was successful. But what happens if you did not achieve the power factor? Then there's an additional step. From the 8 rounds, 4 already used. They will actually fire off the 3 other rounds through the chronograph, again with your gun. And the 3 highest average velocities of the total of 6 shots that they fired, they will use to calculate the power factor. And again, if you achieve your power factor, it's good to go, you can continue, no problem. But a problem arises when you still did not achieve the power factor. Then there's still 1 round left from the 8 rounds is being used to weigh another time the bullet, and again they will recalculate using the 3 highest average velocities of the total of 6 rounds shot, together with the new weight of the bullet, And if the power factor then is okay, you again are good to go. But if the power factor is not okay, depending on whether or not you shoot major or minor, if you shoot major, for example, open major, for example, you need to have 160 power factor. If you have 155, you will actually be reclassified as open minor instead of open major, but you can still continue the match, and your scores will be recalculated in minor power factor and not in major power factor. But what happens, for example, when you shoot in production optics, where the minimum is 125 and you achieve, for example, 120? Well, then you can still continue with the match, but your scores are not considered in the official ranking. So you will have a no scored ranking and your points will not count. So you can continue, but your rounds will not count. Again, this is something that you really should avoid. And if I go back to my first point, make sure that under controlled circumstances, you measure your power factor on a regular basis. And for those who reload, if you change just anything as far as the reloaded ammo is concerned, I do recommend to also check it using a chronograph, because you would be surprised, for example, when you change the primer from a different producer, for example, that might have an impact on your power factor. The same if you change the type of powder you use, or you increase or you decrease the weight of your bullet. That all has an impact on the power factor. So something to measure under controlled circumstances in your normal habitat, and do not wait on an official match to figure out that there's actually an issue with your power factor. This is the basic procedure as far as measuring power factor is concerned.